A ton of.
I'll try to. Yeah, there's already a bunch in the chat. I'll try to somehow regulate what's going on in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, so is this the first time you guys have done an event like this?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll try to do it live. Yeah, there's already a bunch in the chat. Platforms, yes.
Okay. So you're going to figure out a lot of stuff this time, right?
Oh yeah, this is super informal.
Cool.
We're live, so we're already up.
Yeah.
Cool.
Wow, things are going on.
Yeah.
Wow, this is... I'm liking Mike's faces, though.
Smile.
Yeah. Well, hello everyone in the chat. I guess I'll start out.
Sure.
We're going to do, so this is our first informal kind of diagnostic discussion after dark. We all decided we'd get together and just kind of have a little shop talk get together, interact with everyone, have a good time. So we're going to kind of, it's really informal, so we don't have a whole lot of organization, we don't have a whole lot of schedule going on. We're going to probably talk about some cars we've dealt with recently, some activities we've got coming up, training events we're going to be at, things we're getting involved in.
Well, hello everyone.
Join us and see us here on YouTube or also on the Zoom platform.
This is our first informal kind of diagnostic discussion after dark. We all decided we'd get together and just kind of have a little shop talk get together, interact with everyone, have a good time.
Where's that coming
So
from?
we're going to kind of, it's really informal, so we don't have a whole lot of organization, we don't have a whole lot of schedule going on. We're going to probably talk about some cars we've dealt with recently, some activities we've got coming up, training events we're going to be at, things we're getting involved in. Well, hello everyone. Join us, see us here on YouTube or also on the Zoom platform. This is our first informal
So,
Hey, Chad, can you mute yourself real quick?
Got it.
Got it. Cool.
All right, we're good.
an extremely large echo. All right.
So maybe some informal rules. Just keep your mic echo turned off until you're ready to talk, so we don't have to deal with that again. That was crazy.
Yeah. So there will be approximately whatever length of lag that was, you'll see. So if you guys could, in the Zoom platform, if you could keep your mics muted is what Chris was saying, because we're going to hear your desktop audio through the stream. But so everyone heard it twice. That's what we've got going on. So I'm not sure which one of us Train by Tech guys wants to go first, kick off what's going on, but I guess the two bigger things announcement-wise is we've got a series of videos coming out. So we do have some picoscope basic training stuff, some getting to know your scope, setting it up, understanding some of the different ins and outs. Nothing super advanced, nothing a lot of you guys aren't already aware of, but it's to hopefully let's all get to the same level and kick off with just some stuff that we all need to maybe revisit. I know all of us, when we go to training events, you go to a class, you go to take a class you feel like you're extremely familiar with, and somebody is going to remind you of something that a process or a procedure that maybe you stopped doing or let slip, or something that'll kind of get you back on track and hopefully refresh your memory, get the juices flowing, so we all get a little better with that. And then I think we've also got, we're all going to be at Super Saturday, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Yep.
Also, we plan on doing a couple other series with the other popular tools, like possibly the Snap-on tool, any other tools that you guys may would like us to do demos with. There's so many of us that there's a good possibility that we have the same tool that you may need help with. So if you have any suggestions, let us know and we can help you with that tool.
Easiest way to let us know would be to go to the website, www.trainedbytechs.com. There's a contact us section. We monitor that email pretty closely. So if you fill out some information in there, just let us know what you're thinking, what you'd like to see, some criticism, comments, praise, always appreciated, of course. But yeah, that's the best way to do that. It's hard for us to keep track of comments. If we've got an email, it's easy for us to put it on our agenda of something we'd like to do next.
Well, Keith, I'd like you to start with your the case study that we talked about with that Ford you had. That was pretty interesting. I think a lot of people will will enjoy that.
Yeah, I did not enjoy it while it was happening. So a little preface of this story was somebody had diagnosed this Ford Ranger. The quotations was for diagnosed. It needed a PCM. It was a no crank, no start condition. It's a 2001 Ford Ranger with the U engine code 3.0. So just single overhead cam, run of the mill, no flex fuel. And this thing was a no crank, no start. It was towed to us. The customer had declined repair with whoever diagnosed the PCM. They had installed their own PCM from an online retailer. The PCM they had installed came with 2 keys because part of the process of installing a new PCM on a Ford or Mazda product of that era includes the requirement of 2 unique keys to do any of the patch functions, which is required after a PCM is to be programmed. So it came with 2 keys that were uncut. The instructions, the instructions luckily were left in the passenger seat for me, so I knew how to do my job. Those were, the instructions said to cut at any hardware store and then to be programmed. Reading the verbiage of the paperwork was pretty vague. It did mislead whoever would have purchased this PCM into believing that they could simply install the PCM and program the keys, and that was it. It did not mention that the PCM needed to be programmed. So it came to us with a still no crank, no start after the PCM was installed. They said that they installed the PCM. They said that it was programmed and that the keys were programmed, and it was still a no crank, no start. So I will use the term program keys a lot. It is incorrect under most circumstances. Usually keys are registered. There are keys that are programmed, but those terms are interchangeable. So this vehicle came to me. I was to determine why it was still a no crank, no start. So I immediately determined that the PCM was not programmed. I used Ford IDS version 111.1, the most current, with a VCM1. I was able to determine there was no VIN registered from the PCM, and that going into programmable parameters and configuration, there was no configuration set. So the PCM was not programmed. So not having the original PCM, we had to go forward with programming the PCM that was installed. So I used the VIN number from the truck and the tear tag from the PCM, which is kind of sketchy when someone provides you with a PCM. If the tear tag is incorrect, then it will register incorrectly for pulling data off the network on what kind of PCM it's for. So you got to be careful to make sure that it's the correct part number PCM for the vehicle when doing this era of Fords, because if you input the part number and it's incorrect for the vehicle, it will program it incorrectly. So finish the programming, set the configuration. Doing configuration asked for axle ratio and a couple other items. To find that the simplest was to just have access to Ford's factory service information, and using the Oasis tab, which gives all the build data. It easily listed all the factory information the vehicle's built with, the tire size, all that stuff. So we confirmed all that, I made sure parameters were configured correctly, went through to program the keys, and I was given an error almost immediately. Just trying to do the 10-minute patch wait time. I went through that. Sorry, I'm trying to keep up with the chat at the same time. Went through that patch wait time, 10 minutes, and immediately was given an error that says unable to connect the module. The very first time I tried to do the key erase function. So at that point, we determined that most likely the PCM was not what was wrong with this truck, since it wouldn't accept any keys. It wouldn't get into the patch module. It was given an error off the bat. We did try an aftermarket tool in the event we had some issues, because currently there is a transition period away from the VCM1. It's semi-official. So there are some known issues with using the most current level of IDS with a VCM1. Sometimes a VCM2 is required. So we did try an aftermarket tool, and it was given the same error. So we got it okay from the customer to go forward with some diagnosis and analysis time to determine what the issue with the keys were, and hopefully determine at the same time if it was the root issue of the vehicle. So it was determined that the PATS transmitter itself was bad. I'm trying to make this as short as possible so we can discuss it, but it's important to go through all these things. The PATS transmitter is pretty simple. It's got a power and a ground. It houses the antenna and a receiver. So the system's pretty simple. When a key is input in the ignition and you cycle the key on, the PCM is providing a 12-volt signal to the transmitter, and it actually pulls that signal itself down to ground. That indicates to the transmitter that it needs to go through its cycle of putting a magnetic field out that would energize the transponder in the chip. And then when it energizes the transponder, that transponder boosts out its serial number, its ID. That ID is read by the antenna within the transmitter. And then that is sent back through a similar setup as how the command was sent to the transmitter. So the PCM also provides a 12-volt signal to another wire of the transmitter, and then the transmitter pulls that signal down to ground in its fashion to tell it we have an ID and what that is back to the PCM. So it's pretty easy to diagnose this issue. We had power and ground to the transmitter that were voltage drop tested good. The PCM did in fact pull that initial signal, the signal input to the transmitter down, telling it to do its job, and the transmitter did nothing. It did not pull the signal back down to ground. It did not send any information back. This was pretty easy to see on an oscilloscope. I think at about a 5 millisecond per division time base. It's approximately a battery voltage down, so you're going to need to see at least 12 volts on the screen. It was nothing, so the transmitter itself was bad. We replaced the transmitter after we got approval from the customer. We really couldn't go much farther without getting proper paths programmed through. There's not much we can do on confirming that's the only problem. So we got a transmitter in, approved from the customer, installed the transmitter, double-checked our work and how we had the pull-down signal from the transmitter, indicating back to the PCM. So at this time, the vehicle is only provided with one key. And we knew up front we needed 2 keys. We let the customer know that. They were unable to get back to us in time with multiple keys, so we had to use a method that is used among some locksmiths. Explaining how the system just works may help you understand this, but if you have a key that is cut to the vehicle and you are able to block the signal from that key, the transponder within that key, you can take another key and hold it next to it when you actually cycle the key. So the only transponder that will be read will be the one that's not cut to the vehicle, but it is a separate, unique transmitter ID. And that's why when you get keys from the hardware store that are cloned, it's very difficult to realize it, because you'll get an error, and not always on that era of boards where you get an error that tells you that key is already programmed. It just tells you it's failed. So when I'm trying not to trail off, guys, sorry. when you have a set of keys that are from a hardware store, usually they are not uniquely identified. They're not uniquely identified. So the key is taken to the hardware store, and they use a special kind of transponder that is programmable. And instead of having its own unique ID that is then registered to the vehicle, it is actually copying the ID from your original key that you gave the person. So it's a clone. So essentially the 2 keys are indistinguishable by the PCM or the transmitter. They're identical. So it assumes it's the same key. And the problem is that it requires 2 unique identified keys in order to complete the PATS programming. Ford just decided you need to have 2 keys, and it's going to require that before you can complete that initial PATS programming. So the issue for us having only 1 key is we put the first key, the only key that's cut to the vehicle, program it. It says successful. Cycle the key off. You tell it we're going to program another key. So we cover the head of that key with aluminum foil. We insert the key, hold another key that's uncut, but it has a separate identifier. It's just a blank key. This of the correct transponder type. Cycle the key on. It recognizes that, says successful, and we should be done. So we go to cycle the key with the aluminum foil off of the original one, and we get a blinking theft light. And we have a B, I wish I would have taken better notes, a B1581 code, which is transponder, the number of the code literally identifies that there is not enough keys programmed to complete the PATS function. And PATS is Passive Anti-Theft System. That's the acronym I'm using for that. That's Ford's term for their anti-theft system. So kind of went around back and forth, trying different orders of the 2 keys to narrow down, because I believe we had a bad key. And I was able to go grab 3 or 4 blank keys from my stash, my box of keys. I actually left the aluminum foil covered on the key that was provided by the customer, the only key that we had that was cut to the vehicle. And I went through the same function, but instead of me ever allowing that key to be read, I only allowed my blanks to be read. So I actually programmed like 4, just out of desperation, frustration at the time. So I programmed these 4 keys to the car, and the vehicle would start and run with any of those keys. The customer later the following day was able to provide to us all the rest of the keys they had. They had 2 factory Ford keys, 1 aftermarket Stratic brand key, and then they provided the other key that came with the PCM. I repeated the process and programmed all of the keys, starting with the 2 factory Ford keys, then the Stratic, and then the 2 other keys that were provided by the online retailer with the PCM. The only keys that would function for the car after that was successfully completed was the 2 Ford keys and the Stratic. Both of the keys provided with the PCM did not function correctly. They would not program with multiple attempts.
And they came
so
with
we were
the PCM.
provided with an incorrect part, provided the vehicle had a problem that was unrelated to the part that was installed, and we were provided 2 faulty keys, all by the customer, unfortunately.
That's outstanding.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, it was.
That was a lot
nightmare.
of story. That was a lot of stuff happening.
Right, but I wanted to make sure that there's a full encompassing situation of what happened. So you guys have the entire story of what happened. That's from beginning to end how it went over the course of 2.5 days.
Is there a way to call the company that provided the PCM to see if they had any help for the keys that they sent you that were bad?
I, being in line of customer to diagnostician working on the project,
Yeah.
Was not afforded the ability to speak to the customer that owned the vehicle, and I was not given that opportunity. But I am familiar with the online retailer, and I'm familiar with this being an issue. It is not unknown for sure, because the key did not appear to be any brand that I am familiar with.
No,
And I carry, in my case, I carry GTL, Stratic, JMA, and factory keys, ILCO, all of them, and this was not any of those.
I just feel like they should know. You know, if they're sending you keys with your module, they ought to work.
Right. And they may have gotten a batch of them that were from this supplier, and previous batches were from someone else. I unfortunately did not put in the effort or the time to reach out to them.
Okay.
So that was my short story for today.
Now,
So what's the lesson?
Yeah.
What's the lesson learned here?
Right. So there were a couple things. It was upfront explained to the person facilitating me coming out and looking at this that there's a high probability that a diagnosis by someone else that led to a customer installing their own parts was very possibly not going to fix the vehicle. That's why originally we were trying to track down the original PCM, but customer didn't respond in a very timely manner, and time is of the essence for me. I'm paid per job, so I need to get them done as quickly as possible, and waiting days wasn't an option for myself or the shop. So they were aware up front. I don't know what their recourse to the customer was, what they explained to the customer, but it seemed like they understood in their interactions with the customer. The customer was very understanding that the situation was not our fault, that we were trying to resolve the issue for them. So I think it's difficult especially when you talk about installing customer supplied parts and installing parts based on someone else's diagnosis. You do fall under some express versus implied warranty issues there, and that can get really fuzzy. At the end of the day, regardless of how big your no warranty stamp is, you are the professional technician. You are responsible for installing a quality part.
Amen.
Yep. Especially if you're in a state like California where the judge will hang you. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
It's like the Wild West.
That's another planet.
Absolutely. It's absolutely another planet.
My question to you is, how do you stop that from happening in the future? Did you obviously you learned something, but how do you, what did you implement?
What I implemented was I changed my process a little bit on identifying this type of issue from the get-go. After kind of hindsight 2020, looking back, I have a tool, and I have no idea where I got this thing. It is a small breadboard with a giant hole cut in it, so it'll slip over just about any lock cylinder assembly installed. And it's really just a coil of micro-printed wire, and on either end of the wire, it attaches to an LED. So when a transmitter is cycled on and it puts out that magnetic field to energize the transponder, it will also light up at that LED. It acts just like a primary secondary circuit in an ignition coil. Yep. That initial magnetic field boosts out and is able to energize, and it's coiled through that wire to act as a secondary type of lost my words here. Regardless, it lights up the LED.
Yeah, it's very,
picks up that magnetic field, and it's enough to energize that LED.
Very cheap tool too.
Very cheap tool. Yeah. I want to say I probably paid like $5 if I even paid for it. If it didn't just come with something else that I got.
I think the shipping is more than the tool.
Right. If I would have thought about the process, said, okay, I'm trying to identify this transmitter issue, it would have been much simpler than pulling out the oscilloscope to just confirm that I had power and ground to the actual transmitter, and that I had power from the PCM side. And then if I would have just slipped this over it and cycled the key on, it would have lit the LED up and pulsed it to tell me that the antenna is actually pushing out the magnetic field. Or the transmitter is pushing out the magnetic field and actually trying to energize. It did not function. So after I got all said and done, I plugged the old transmitter back in, took a key with no transponder in it at all, and then held it inside the antenna, cycled the key on with the ring around it, and the old transponder or the old transmitter did not light up the light, and the new one did. So regardless if there's a transponder in the key or not, it will put the signal out and it will turn the LED on. So to my process, I kind of just added, hey, if I think I may have a transmitter failure, maybe check to see if I'm getting any kind of communication out of it or any kind of field out of it.
I'm looking up that tool right now and see if I can post a link to it. You know, it's a very good tool to have, and it's so cost effective that you're kind of silly not to have it.
Yeah, I can't imagine it'd be more than $5 or $10.
Yeah, I saw that on Facebook a while ago, and it was like, why have I never heard about this tool?
Right?
Yeah, who's got a picture? Come on, show us a picture.
I'm finding it.
I will literally run up to my truck and grab it in a few minutes.
I think they're saying on the chat that AE Tools might sell it.
The red ring looking thing?
Yeah.
Mine's a green breadboard with a printed wire on it and an LED mounted at the top. It looks like a Radio Shack job that could be done cheap if Radio Shack even existed anymore.
I bought mine on Amazon, so I'm pulling up my recent orders.
Hold on. I get it.
So I'd really like to know if there's any other questions about that process or anything anyone could tell me that would be. I know there are some guys out there that do this way more than me.
Link is in the chat.
You got it? Cool. I'll post that to YouTube. Okay.
There's so many chats to monitor.
Yeah.
I know. I'm trying to monitor the YouTube chat at the same time.
Can you screen share
I'm
link,
doing it
Brian?
right now. All right, here's the tool.
My screen,
it
but
is
I'm on an
$6, and that little ring will go over the halo where the key is, and that little LED will light up if the transponder is producing that magnetic field he was talking about. If it's actually searching for the ID for the key. So
there is some information on here about Sarge Tester 99 in the YouTube chat wrote, "This is becoming very common in my area. The customers come in with new parts in hand, which were bought online, and they insist on us installing. Then after work, it is found that either the part is wrong size, wrong part, or other. Is this an issue that you see?"
Yes.
So we are all plagued with that question from customers. I think I'm on the opposite. I think I'm probably in disagreement with most technicians. I see it as being inevitable. I think Jeff Bezos with Amazon is pushing hard for his. They have a system set up where a customer can purchase a part on Amazon, and within Amazon they are creating a database of installers for these parts. And it is a system set up where you're able to purchase a part, select an installer in your area, the part gets delivered to your installer, and he will install the part for you. and all the paperwork is worked out on the Amazon side, and the installer is paid through Amazon. The price is preset. I think I don't agree with it. I don't think my customers should tell me what quality of part they install in their vehicle. I don't agree with that at all.
No.
But I think it's 100% inevitable. I think that the power that Amazon has. I work with Amazon, and even some fulfillment by Amazon stuff. I've got a friend of mine who does it a lot, and we were talking about this just yesterday. That is the largest retailer in the world, and you cannot call them.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's going to change. Yeah, I get it. You know, the consumer is going to drive it, but
Correct.
really the output is going to be, you know, as we get more technical challenges, these are not going to work out, and these customers are going to realize that this is not a commodity. This is not something that you just order off a menu, and I don't see it. I don't see it working out. But you know, there's a lot of smart people in Silicon Valley, and you know, when they come up with an idea, they sketch it all out, and none of them are connected to the ground level, right?
Correct.
And, you know, so they throw a lot of money at it and see how long it sticks, right? So
Right. I worked in the parts industry for quite a while, and I fancied myself to be a pretty good parts guy at the time. And I had a heck of a time getting the correct part for a vehicle sometimes.
yeah.
I mean, just brakes on a Ford. Somebody tell me what rotor and brake pad fits on an 04 F-150. I need to know the lug size. Is it a Heritage Edition? Is it a NASCAR Edition? 14 or 12 millimeter stud? Is it got 2-piston, 4-piston? Is the rear disc? Is the rear... I mean, there are literally like 8 different rotors you can put on an 04 F-150 two-wheel drive pickup truck.
And the service writer is going to come back to you asking you 15 questions 15 times.
Right. Does the customer know all of this?
No. I'll bet you if you went down to Callahan's and had the Tommy Boy get you the right pad, good shape, right?
Guarantees on the box. So I've talked enough for the whole night. So who else wants to?
Well, let's open it up. Anybody got any questions?
I had something that I thought about today, and I'm curious if anybody knows of anything. Is there anything out there right now that you could take and swab a fluid on a car and then run a test on it to find out what it is? And the reason I'm thinking about this is one of the classes I was considering building, I want to put it in it. I was thinking about taking like the swabs they have at a doctor's office, the really long ones with a cotton swab at the end, and sticking it down inside of a cylinder, and then being able to swab the top of the piston to find out if you have coolant, gas, or oil in it. Since obviously, even with our borescopes now, when you get a reflection, you still don't always know. But I don't know if there's anything out there to where you could swab it, touch it to something, and have it like tell you definitely is it coolant, fuel, or oil.
Well,
like a color test.
I think you really just want to know if it's coolant or not, because you will have oil and fuel in the cylinder. Period.
Right. I should have known. Hans commented. Says, "Yeah, I've done that." He would know. He always knows that stuff.
Yeah.
But well, obviously you're going to have some. But my thing is,
right.
Like prime
Field
example,
test.
we had a car. Yeah. And prime example, we had a car this week that after it sat for 4 days, it would flood. It had to sit for 4 days. And originally it was thought that it was fuel because it smelled like fuel, but in the end it was an intake gasket leaking on it, and it was flooding multiple cylinders. So it was kind of a mixture of both, but the flooding cause was because of the coolant.
Some of the old timers will, take the fluid and take their finger and wipe the fluid and taste it. I don't know if you ever tried that.
That's how I was taught.
I don't do that, but
I hate it when I find out it's brake fluid.
Yeah.
You don't do that anymore? Coolant is good first thing in the morning.
Some of those old guys aren't even living anymore, so it might not be a good idea.
I was going to say.
Especially with some synthetic fluids out there, it can't be good to eat.
Brian, what did you search on Amazon to find that tool?
I actually posted that link into the comments on YouTube for people to click on.
In the comments or in the chat?
The actual comments, not the chat.
Oh, good, good. That'll be much more difficult to find in the chat or in the comment or in the chat. Yeah. Bill Yoder was asking where the link to it was. So, Bill, it's in the comments section of the YouTube video.
Yep. Jason was asking if there was any tools that you know of that may read the IDs of the key that you're working on. Yes,
there are quite a few. The most inexpensive option that I found is Zedbull, Zedbull. The actual Zedbull tool is fairly inexpensive, and then unfortunately there are a lot of Chinese copies out there, and they can be found for sub $50. Under $50. I don't advise using any tool that isn't manufactured by the person who owns the copyright and trademark of the tool. But if you were to get a hold of a tool, it's fairly inexpensive. It can read the ID from them, and it's actually designed to clone keys. So if you are in the business of actually cloning a key rather than registering it to the vehicle, which sometimes is a viable option depending upon the manufacturer of the car, it is an option. It will has a space to read the key, and then it actually will tell you the ID, and then allows you to write it into a clonable transponder. But it can be used simply for just reading the ID to see if it does have a valid serial or if the key itself works. I think the Auro tool, AURO tool that's sold by AES Wave also will do that. It will read the transponder identification. I think Tommy has that tool, doesn't he?
Yes, he does.
Is Tommy in here?
Tommy is not in here.
I think Hans has the tool as well, doesn't he? Or did he sell it?
Oh, yeah, he does. Hans had the... Or does Keith have the tool?
No, Hans had it.
I see DeFazio in here, and he's going to unmute himself and tell us if he's got it or not.
I have the Oro 100. That's got a key reader with it.
Okay.
Yeah, I do not have it.
What?
Oh.
I thought you had everything.
Wait, a tool you don't have? No.
Yeah, it has the Autel name attached to it, so, you know.
Oh.
Nothing against them, of course.
Yeah, you love that Autel.
yeah. I think that's me and DeFazio's back and forth, as I like Autel over Launch. He likes Launch over Autel.
I'm in the Launch camp myself.
I'm in both now that I have that small little Diag gun. That is the most amazing $500 piece of equipment that I've ever owned.
That being said, my launch has crashed, and I'm waiting for Keith to give me one of those 18 launches. Got in the back of his truck.
I just finally set up the Borescope app on my launch last night, but now I have to get an adapter for it to work because I sent the adapter that would have worked to Brian.
the Borescope for the launch? I'm not a big fan of it. It's too big.
No. I set up my Borescopes.
Okay.
The Oasis Borescope. I set that up, the app on it, but I don't have an adapter that fits in the hole that's on the launch case to do it. The one that would fit is a flexible USB to the mini USB, I think is what it's called. Whatever you people with Android phones use.
Let's see.
I had one that would have fit, but I sent it to Brian yesterday.
Thank you. By the way. What do we got here, Chris?
All right. I'm sure Scott's familiar with Diagnostic Network, because reasons. There's anybody else here? Anybody else here familiar with Diagnostic Network?
Absolutely. Love it.
Yep.
Yep.
All right.
I think I was wearing my Diag.net shirt in my last couple videos.
Yeah.
Good for you. Right on, dude.
Hey, that's a sweet shirt. That's a ProTech. That's a really nice sweat wicking shirt. I'm not gonna lie.
My wife picked that out, by the way. So if you ever meet my wife, you got to tell her that she did a solid. Okay.
Well, I'm gonna give props to my wife for setting up the way the shirts were all set up in that picture I sent the other day.
Okay. Who did the lighting? That's what I want to know. That's really where it's all at.
Yeah.
Even good lighting can make a bad picture look good.
Yep. Yeah.
On Diagnostic Network, I was looking for a post kind of to share just some good information of of a guy kind of just learning a lesson, and I came across this guy, Mario Rojas. I'm hoping I'm saying it right. With his Mazda CX-9, and he had a diagnosis that kind of kicked his ass, and he learned a question through it. I just thought it was great because it's a good representation of some of the stuff that's on there. It's not a guy beating his chest. It's a guy saying, I got my butt kicked and I learned something from it. And just figured we all could go through it. And because I have to read it, I'm just going to go read it. All right. So he goes, no, nobody is perfect, true. But in this industry, lessons are either learned through training or experience. Although all training is good, not all experiences are. Learn from my mistakes as I did. Vehicle in question is a 2007 Mazda CX-9 3.5. This beatdown of a lesson already took place a while ago. It is posted on another site, but not as detailed as it is here. This is how it happened. Vehicle came in from another shop. They had changed the spark plugs unbeknownst to me with a misfire, a jolty misfire, he says. I guess it's like a jaunty misfire, but even worse. On cylinder 2. Code verified. I did the relative compression test and it passed. I suggested to the customer that we should replace the spark plugs. Client declines and states the previous shop has already done so. Okay. It always goes to show that the customer should probably tell you the information up front. I proceeded to scope the coil current, triggered off number 2, secondary using a paddle probe, tucked underneath the plenum. The coil fires as it should, but it also fires again in between where it should not fire. None of the other cylinders do this. They fire as they should when it's their turn. You got a nice cool little picture of here of the paddle probe working. Got some weird stuff happening over there. I scoped cam and crank signals and found what I believe to be a noisy signal from the crank sensor. And now this guy, and I did not. Sorry, I did not save the waveform. I removed the CKP, which I found metal shavings on and replaced. The misfire still persists. Mode 6 data was absent and no misfire counter was present. But the same scope test revealed the same behavior from cylinder 2, firing when it shouldn't and not intermittent either, like clockwork every time. Every time it fires at what I believe is close to its intake valve opening. So I called it. I told the manager the PCM is firing the coil when it shouldn't, or so I thought. We waited a week, got a rebuilt one. The programmer, I honestly don't do reflashes or programming, so at least he admits it, did his thing. And lo and behold, nothing has changed. Same exact symptoms. The programmer has my lifetime inexperience, and he also mentioned it felt like a closed gap misfire. No testing, just sat in it and felt it, and I took it to heart. Which is why then I pulled the intake and replaced the plugs, even though they were changed. I pulled that spark plug, and it had a hairline crack across its insulation. So technically, Garland, the programmer, was right, since the spark energy made its way to ground with ease due to atmospheric pressure. Put it all back together, and all was right with the world. At this point, I felt like a punching bag. Why did I assume that just because the other shop changed the spark plugs, everything was fine? Things like this really have you doubt yourself. How could I have gotten through? How could this have gotten through? What was the second firing? Is that energy a result of the misfire? If customers only knew the amount of pressure we put ourselves through when we work on their cars. So I hope you can learn from my mistakes. This was my worst mistake ever, although some of you may have figured out with ease. Not all of us are equal. May you learn the lesson the easy way. And I just thought this was a great post of somebody. Sometimes you see a lot of these case studies, and it's always after the fact, and they only give you the good parts, not the trouble they went through. And I like this one because he maybe he made a mistake, maybe he didn't make a mistake, but he learned something, and he put it up there, and that's what I like.
I also like the comments that are in there as well. People weren't they weren't trying to destroy him. They were being professional and giving a pat on the back. Even though you messed up, you didn't give up. A mistake doesn't mean you are a failure. You know what I mean? Exactly. So I thought that was outstanding. You don't often see that in social media or stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. And this is the kind of stuff I like to read. I like to see some. Not that I'm looking for somebody to struggle, but I like to see the fact that somebody's learned something, and he did it, and maybe he learned a lesson, taught a technique, and in the comments, I believe somebody was helping him out with what was going on in here. I don't want to, unless somebody wants to help read some of these comments, we can open them up.
Hey, go back up to the waveform real quick. Let's just look at that for a second.
So I did want to. I have not read this one yet on Diagnostic. I don't know how I missed it, but I do want to point out almost immediately what made me maybe see part of what he wasn't seeing was the secondary pattern. Analyzing that a little bit, we can kind of see that it's trending downwards, which is usually an indication of either a loss of compression or a ridge condition, which essentially is the same energy, a lower amount of energy required for that spark to carry over. So that's a pretty good indication that he had possibly some leakage outside of the cylinder, because a low compression condition is atmospheric condition.
But in my experience with paddles, I mean, they're not always the best, especially when you tuck one under an intake. And I think that was in one of the comments, somebody was mentioning that, he was probably catching a little bit of reflection off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but if you notice that second event in the center there happened below, if you look straight below that was during another cylinder's firing. So that most likely is just noise that he was picking up from another cylinder.
Right.
not
so
an actual.
How would you prove that out and just say, hey, what's the relationship? Would you lay out the engine configuration and look at the firing order and kind of see who's paired up to who?
Yeah, I would also just look to see physically how his probe was installed. If the back end of the probe was laying on top of that coil or very close to that coil, it might be pretty easily explainable just by, its actual location of where he laid the cop at.
I think on looking at this, obviously if I'm in the thick of it, everybody makes mistakes. But just looking at this, generally you want to see repeatability and repetition. Maybe I put a little more time on the screen, and I generally use a Pico. I don't know exactly what scope this is.
I don't either.
But I use a Pico, so I would hook up maybe rotate some rotational rulers and put however many 6 cylinders, and you'd see right there that it would line up every time. And that would lead me to think, okay, fine, what cylinder could that possibly be? And then look at your firing order.
And then you could prove that by, after identifying, plugging in your firing order, identifying that cylinder, if you could physically unplug that ignition coil, you can take the event away and bring the event back.
Yep.
Also, you can look at the the trigger to the coil. If it's a 3-wire coil, you can look at the actual signal from the PCM to see if it's actually being commanded on and not picking up noise from a different cylinder. If it's a 2-wire coil, then I would be sampling coil primary if possible. Coil primary is going to tell you much more detail than a paddle probe.
Well, it's a CX9, so it's a 2-wire coil.
It's a 2-wire.
Okay, then I would definitely be doing primary if I can access the coil.
Yep.
Well, since it's a Ford product, you're going to have the coils are fed through a fuse. So you're going to be able to access all primary through the fuse and sync off of an easy cylinder that's not underneath the intake. So I think since none of us wrote those comments, we should probably all comment on Diagnostic Network and let them know what we come up with. I mean, we're talking about it together.
Yeah, doing a post-mortem like this is always good. Like Chris was saying, you can look back and go, oh well, that guy did he overlooked this or that or whatever. But yeah, when you're in the thick of it, like you said, you're in the shop. The clock is ticking. You got another car over here. You're going to have to get done too. So you're time slicing like crazy, and sometimes things will kick your butt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Case in point, my Equinox post on the Diagnostic Network.
Yeah,
I completely skipped steps. I overlooked a known problem. I stopped short of fully diagnosing the problem and underdiagnosed that car.
Is that the one with the thermistor device in the linear EGR valve?
Yeah, well, it shows the diagram. I guess someone confused the stepper motor solenoid assembly for a thermistor.
Yeah, I went and looked it up in 3 different service information systems, and they were all the same.
Yeah,
and that it came from the OE that way. So
now, did you look at the legend to see if that actually is what they're using for a thermistor, or if they're using that for a stepper motor?
Oh, I saw another. I saw a thermistor in the diagram.
Okay,
also.
had the same.
So the IET was the same device.
That's a complete failure from the OE on doing that.
Yeah, so that was probably a summer intern who was assigned to line up these objects, and they were.
Yep, somebody's nephew needed a job.
Right.
So let's go. Want to go look at your post, Keith?
Sure, we could tear me apart again.
Let's go do that.
I love talking about the ones that got me because I learned so much from them. And
Absolutely.
I am all but embarrassed to talk about them.
You don't remember the cars that were easy. You remember the car that threw you under the
absolutely.
bus and dragged you.
All right. Do you want to screen share and you take it over?
Oh, goodness. Okay.
I've read enough for the night.
Oh, because I haven't talked enough yet.
Well, you like to talk. That's the problem. We'll be here till 3
Yeah, I do like to talk. Yeah. I'm unfortunately good at it, I think, is what I've been told.
I'm going to stop sharing, and do you want to pull yours up?
Yeah, I'll pull mine up.
I'm going to stop sharing.
Apparently, there's a question on YouTube. Keith wants you to ask.
He says, reading the comments, there's a lot about customers supplying their own parts. Can you discuss your strategy and that you use to ensure that you can always recover a good profit without losing that customer?
Myself?
Yeah, a group, I guess.
Yeah, let somebody else answer that one. I've talked. I'm fixing to talk some more, so somebody else can answer that.
That's always a hard topic to cover. You know, when somebody supplies their own parts, you lose the profit. You know, your profit margin goes way down. So, my shop, we currently almost don't accept customer parts unless it's some kind of specialized thing. If we get some old Mustang or something, and they want let's say a power steering conversion or something, we'll let them supply the parts. But for the most part, we just don't go down that route.
I know, Mike Molesky, you're a shop owner. What do you do in that instance?
Well, the first thing that I did was I contacted my insurance and I said, guys, what is the liability that I have by using a customer supplied part? And they got back to me and said that the quality assurance isn't there. There's no, I'm trying to look for the word for it, but essentially, if you don't know where it came from, you don't know how good it is, they don't want it. So their advice to me was to turn down customer supplied parts. But you guys know that I don't just do everyday repairs. I do a lot of modification things as well. So there is definitely some specialized parts involved. Yep. And sometimes people want to bring parts that they find on the internet because we have access to thousands of brands, but not everything. So when the customer wants to bring their own part, typically we have a spiel where we say, hey, if you bring me the part and it's incorrect or it's broken, I don't have any liability. If you bring me the wrong part and the car's, been on the rack and it takes up time, then you still have to pay me for my time because you're the one that brought me the wrong part. That's what we say, but everyone knows deep down inside that in the end that we're going to end up being found responsible for that issue regardless of the customer supplying a part because I think Keith said in the beginning, we are the professional and in the end the blame goes on us.
And actually I got a perfect example. I had a car in yesterday. She brought her own O2 sensors. The upstream O2 sensor was wrong, so it sat on the rack for hours to get approval for us to buy an O2 sensor and install it.
Yep. I'd be pushing that car out or driving the car out and moving on, I guess.
I think one big thing to keep in mind with that is it's okay to be transparent with a customer. Mm-hmm.
100%.
Everybody understands that a business is there to make profit. Everyone understands that we're not there, to be a charity organization. And obviously there's some people that try to, turn you into one. But if you're open and transparent with a customer and say, look, in an hour we can make X amount off our labor and we make markup off of parts because we spend $12,000 a month with a parts store, and that allows us to do that. They give us a better part. That's figured into our operating costs. So in that hour, if we're $90 an hour, and we know that we're going to make, $100 off of parts, say, in that hour, that's considered into our profit. And if the job that we're going to do for you, we're not going to make money off parts, now we're only going to make $90 in that hour, as opposed to everybody else's car that we make $190. So we're losing money in that hour, so we have to make that up somewhere. And if you sit a customer down and just explain that to them, that look, it's part of our industry that we make money off of parts as well, and are upfront with them, and just explain to them that that's how it is across the board. It's not just me. It's not just, Joe's shop down the road. All of us do that, and explain that everywhere they go, that they're going to get, looked down upon because of that, because they're taking, potentially taking money out of somebody's pocket. As long as you're kind-hearted about it and explain that to them nicely, and kind of bring them into the shop and show them how it goes, and even go as far as to show them, look, this is what I spent, this month on parts. We had a $12,000 parts bill. This is why we're able to buy, at a lesser price than what you can off the street or something like that. That's the way I've always done it. And once people seem to understand that that's the way the industry works, it's a lot easier. It's just like explaining to them. I've never really liked the restaurant analogy, but it's the same deal. When you go to a restaurant, that steak that they're getting, that you're paying $30 for, they probably paid $6 for. So you're paying the guy's labor to cook it, the 2 minutes it takes to cook it, but you're also paying the markup on the food. I mean, it's the same in every industry, not just ours.
Not to mention our warranty.
Exactly.
Now, Keith DeFazio.
Yes.
I see you over there. Now, what about what you do with customer supplied parts? How does that screw up your job? Or does it screw up your job?
It doesn't really screw up my job too much, only because I'm the mobile guy, so I'm the third person. I'm like the third party.
Mm-hmm.
It's the repair shops themselves. The repair shops themselves are actually taking on that responsibility when they first get there. I have a waiver that's actually written on every one of my invoices that says I'm not responsible for any parts at all that the shop themselves have installed. I'm not responsible for the fit and finish, and I had to actually have it written up by a lawyer because the liabilities that go along with that are just too much. I will reference real quick here a YouTube comment though. One of the guys said, I install any part they want, but if it doesn't fix the car, I'll pay 2 hours. I still get paid 2 hours diagnostic time to test it. And that's nice. The only problem is that unfortunately, if I was in a repair shop every day and I was doing this, I'm still responsible for the fit and finish of the part. I didn't manufacture it. I didn't do anything at all. Bottom line is I am the person responsible for checking the part before I install it on the customer's car. I can't tell if that brake pad is bonded properly, but I'm still responsible for it. And that's one of the scary things about it. So if I do it through one of my part suppliers and it's a part that I've purchased, I have a paper trail. I have something that legally binds me to say, okay, this is not a part I produced. I have this receipt. I purchased it from here. And now my lawyers can follow up on that. God forbid something happened with the brake pads or something along those lines, something dangerous. Or even not dangerous, even if it just becomes something that's a stupid lawsuit because, people are the way they are. But having that paper trail is extremely important. And I've actually seen shops, encounter that already. Once before with the brake line, customer provided their own roll of brake line tubing, and that turned into a big debacle for that shop because they ended up having a line that ruptured. No fault at all of the technician. It was just poor quality metal. And of course, it went right back to court, and the guy himself already found out the hard way. And Gazda, which is the gasoline people that are supposed to have all these lawyers that protect them and everything, they came to the forefront and they said, oh yes, we're sure you're going to be in the right. And here in New York, it doesn't mean anything at all. As soon as they went to court, it was immediately found guilty. The guy paid tremendous fines. He actually closed up his shop about a year later. So, yeah, it's not a good thing, And everybody should have posted on their wall, and I don't care where you are in the country. Everybody should have posted on the wall the reasons of liability and why you cannot install a customer supplied part. That's the CYA that we need in this industry.
Good points. Anybody else? Bueller?
Andrew mentioned in the chat that he's a dealer tech, and if a customer has their own parts, their labor rate goes up, and that helps to counteract the loss of profit with not having profit on the part, which is helpful for the management side of it, but you still have that liability that we're talking about.
Yeah.
You're still recovering some of your financial loss by not having the profit, but you still have the liability.
Yeah, that's what we do. We increase the hourly rate per customer supplied part. It's rare though.
We've had shops here that have been sued for part they bought on eBay, the transmission, and it failed, and they sued the shop, and the shop had to buy them a new transmission and cover the labor.
Who bought the transmission? The customer?
The customer did.
From eBay.
The court said you are the professional. You should know better, and said you have to buy them a new one.
If you want to know what causes
that sounds like somebody needs a lawyer.
Well, I was going to say, you want to know what causes all of that? It's the repair industry's image right now in the public.
Well, regardless, there's already legal precedent set. It's kind of already settled.
Yeah.
I mentioned implied versus express warranty, and that was specifically referencing some already in stone case law. It's the precedence is already set. That's the way it's going to be.
Wow, that's crazy. That's insane. Were we going to move on, or were we going to go?
Yeah.
More?
We could spend 4 hours on the customer supplied part, so we should probably just move on.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about your post, Keith, because I want to hear you talk more. You have a lovely, lovely voice.
Like the movie phone guy.
Yeah. You've got mail guy. Could do that. So let me get on here and
Real quick, while you're on that one, Scott, I see your post about the John Deere right to repair stuff.
Yeah,
So,
I don't know much about the heavy duty space. I was looking for some feedback from some heavy duty guys, and I did see a couple popped in there.
Well, funny story about John Deere, and this is why I think it's interesting that they've all of a sudden pushed so hard on the right to repair. So for years, they were the only tractor manufacturer that when you bought their manuals, all of their special tools, their blueprints for every tool was in the back of the manual, so that the farmers could go directly to their local machine shop and say, I need this tool, and everything was there, every measurement, so they could have it. And that was up till just a few years ago. So now, all of a sudden, they complete 180 flip-flopped and are like, no, we don't want any of our farmers to do anything to it, which has created a huge mess in the farming industry, obviously, a ton of pushback from it. But it is very interesting because they have so much with their ADAS. I guess it would more or less be ADAS, but their self-driving tractor stuff. One of my good friends is the guy that goes out and programs the tractors, and he flies a drone over the fields, puts all the information into the software, and then the software calculates how the tractor is going to plant the field and how it would give the most yield. He goes out, programs that in the tractor, and they basically hit a button that says go, and the tractor drives around the field. So from what he tells me, their worry is that people are going to get in and not know what they're doing, program that part of it, and go drive to people's houses.
Oops. So it goes back to the liability end of it,
Right.
Yes.
So,
Yep.
so there's a good point. I mean, I didn't quite understand that, but now that you've pushed that out, that definitely changes the perspective some.
Yeah.
But still, on the service end of it, when the vehicle needs some sort of service, it's not that you're driving that vehicle down to the dealer. That thing's, in the middle of a farm somewhere, or, a remote area. And, some of these guys would like to be able to fix their own stuff, or they may have a mechanic on staff, but
Pretty much all the big farms have at least one mechanic on staff, some multiple, at least all the ones back home do.
Mm-hmm.
So that has been the dilemma. And so far, at least back home, John Deere has been good about that anything like computer-wise, they'll just send their people out to more or less plug into it and tell the farm's mechanic what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then the farm just goes about fixing it. But it would obviously make their life significantly easier if they had a way to read it. Now, there is some aftermarket scan tools out there for it. I've never used any of them, but I'm not sure how much of it covers. I doubt it goes into any of the programming features for the ADAS stuff, but I do know that it can pull codes out of it.
Interesting.
So before I get into this Equinox, Scott, is there a way where people could get a trial run of Diagnostic Network?
Yes, of course. So anybody that wants to have a free 30-day trial, just send an email to support@diag.net and just put in the subject line TBT trial. So train by text trial, and my team will get you fixed up. So thank you.
And we get all the fees that they pay for that, right? Directly to our bank accounts.
Yeah. Yeah, your bank account actually goes right to mine. So.
Yeah.
But actually, Keith, you did a video this afternoon where you were driving around. Okay, so we actually had like 4 or 5 guys just
really
hit us this afternoon. So yeah, you're.
So I'm clear with everyone. We are not being paid by Scott. We greatly appreciate what he's done for the industry, for real. This is a space that we've needed. We've needed a space that's not so noisy like Facebook. YouTube's noisy. We know we're part of the noise on YouTube. We're part of the noise on Facebook. So we appreciate, Scott, you putting that together for us.
I think I did buy you guys a beer, didn't I, when we were in Orlando?
Yeah.
It's like wait a second. Who got a beer? I didn't get a beer or a shirt.
I got a beer.
Oh, you're late to the party. So
I was the party.
You'll see some shirts in a couple weeks or a few weeks when we're in Pennsylvania. Okay.
Oh,
yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I just wanted to point that out that is available. That there was a trial run there. So
awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Really, we 100% really appreciate you putting that space together. I mean, it's been a big change. Hopefully going to be an even bigger change in the industry.
It's what our industry absolutely needs.
Yeah, and we're only in version version 1 right now. So we've got some big plans for some pretty interesting things moving forward. So, and we also want feedback from you guys that are using this space, because we can't make it happen without the other professionals in there using and contributing. So give us the feedback.
Yeah, there's Andrew.
We got Andrew. Oh yeah, right there.
Yeah, you're right there. Look.
So this is my this is another one that I love explaining when I got my butt kicked. This is always great. Like I was explaining before, this is a 2007 Equinox 3.4 run-of-the-mill. It might have been an LT. Yeah, LT. And this particular one was kind of interesting. So I wrote that I'll preface this with a simple statement. Anytime I rush through an analysis or skip any root cause analysis testing I normally perform on a module or component failure diagnosis, this happens to me. So it's true. Every time I skip a step, it burns me 100% of the time. I wrote that it's weird reading something that I wrote. Sorry.
That's called proofing.
Right.
We have editing available now, so you notice that, right? You go in there and edit your mistakes.
Oh, yeah. The shop said the customer expressed a concern of the service StabiliTrak light would come on during highway use and the vehicle would die, and would reset after the key cycle, so the lights would go off and the vehicle would drive again. I was able to replicate the concern, and it did take just specifically some highway driving to get it to replicate this, and then about 8 to 10 seconds after the light came on, car would shut off, and I could never replicate this in town driving. It was just steady highway driving at a higher speed. And that's kind of important, and there were some questions asked from me during this of how I was able to kind of correlate the two issues that I'll get to here in a second. And that was part of it. That was kind of my first clue that I had to be under this certain kind of driving condition. So it's called look at the vehicle and give a diagnosis of the concern. Shop stated they had a few new parts installed elsewhere. They were told the problem started right after the new components were installed. And they supplied a receipt for struts, strut mounts, EGR valve, spark plugs, wires, the purge valve, PCB, and an alignment was done. So that's all that was done before, and then this issue started. So I did a full system scan. So this is kind of my process. If you guys read any of my stuff on Diagnostic Network or anywhere where I write it out, you'll notice there's a very similar theme of my process, and I try to stick to that, because when I deviate from it, I totally fail. So I did a full system scan. There was quite a few codes, as you could see. There were some EGR code, EVAP, EVAP. This torque deliver signal active is kind of just a, hey, we have a problem code. And then there was just some stuff that was unrelated. The lost communication with power steering module, that very possibly could have been from the vehicle dying. So there's a lot of things to kind of take in here. A lot of stuff that's all over the place. The big one was the C0561 system disabled serial error. It's a very deceiving code description. It's kind of, I said it was due to experience. I have found that the C0561, along with EGR codes, was a pretty common fault. But I never take a pattern failure and run with it. I'll never go, well, it's usually always this, so let's replace that. I usually go, hey, it's usually this. I'm going to check there first. I'm going to do my analysis, my testing. So I did some research to create a test plan. I probably, these are notes that I wrote from one that was kind of old, but my research to create a test plan normally happens. I think on this one I was familiar enough with the system that I didn't have to do this, but I wrote it out so you would understand the process. I wrote, knowing from experience on this platform that a P0404 see, I should have proofread this. I should edit this. From an out-of-date PCM calibration or a failed EGR valve will set the C0561. And that's true. I have just an experience thing. It's kind of a pattern fault with this platform, that a failed EGR valve, or there is a technical service bill or a preliminary inspection report, I think is what GM calls it, a PI, stating that there's a calibration update available for the powertrain control module that resolves false P0404 codes. The 5061 is just saying there's a problem with the PCM or one of the other drivability functions of the car, so it's going to disable the StabiliTrak because it's unsure how the vehicle would perform. That's all that C0561 code is. And that, in turn, tells the driver that, hey, your service StabiliTrak system, so because there's an issue that will affect how the StabiliTrak system works. So I bidirectionally controlled the EGR valve and was not seeing what I expected to see, and was not getting the results I was expecting. I'm trying not to walk you guys through this diagnosis and analysis. I'm trying more to get to the point of where I messed up. So I grabbed a wiring diagram and did what I normally do, and immediately there were some issues. There was issues on the vehicle side of this. Let me scroll down here. I noted that the EGR high circuit was shorted to voltage internally in the ECU. So if we look at this diagram, we see the EGR solenoid high circuit control, which is pin 15 on connector 2. With the EGR valve disconnected and the ignition off, I had battery voltage on this connection. Now this is high and low control solenoid, so it just controls this motor via a pulse width modulation, and it changes low and high depending upon which direction it needs to go for power and ground. It should not have had any voltage on it with the key off at all. It should have been a completely dead circuit because it is controlled with a driver. So let's see, I lost my point. Where was that? Okay, yeah. Stuck a battery voltage out of the PCM, key on or off, like I said. So I always, if I'm going to condemn a module, I'm going to check powers and grounds always, because a low voltage condition or a bad ground on a PCM can cause all kinds of havoc. There's no telling, the module can shut off, things won't act like they're supposed to. Most voltage outputs on a PCM, although they are, it seems like you would think 12 volts in and there's just some connection inside the PCM, they almost always go through an analog, digital to analog converter. And they do that because it's trying to filter out some of that AC ripple that it's getting from the system and make a clean output. So if you were to use an oscilloscope and you test the 12-volt V plus power into a module, the main power feed, the large wire that you find, and look at the AC ripple on that wire, and then look at the AC ripple on a power that's supplied out of that module, it is significantly less on the output of the module. And it's not because the module's taking all that in, just being metal box. It goes to a converter, and it's to help stabilize that voltage, especially when it's supplying that voltage to a component that's used to measure like a crank sensor or a cam sensor or something. So I'm trying not to backtrack, but anyways, that's where I messed up. I checked powers and grounds as soon as I saw that the PCM had a power out of it, because I confirmed the PCM was bad, right? But I did not confirm what caused it. And that was where I messed up. I underdiagnosed this one. So I called for PCM, installed it, programmed it, went through, had to do like a steering yaw relearn, had I rechecked at the time. As soon as I got done, as soon as I got plugged in and programmed, I checked that wire. Okay, cool. Key off and key on. I've got nothing on this wire because nothing's controlling the EGR valve yet. There's no command for it. There's no criteria within the PCM input-wise. It says it's time for an EGR event. So it reacted as I expected. So I was like, okay, it's all good. Now we got to do a test drive to confirm. We want to run through that monitor. And the monitor for running the EGR valve is a steady RPM at speeds above like 30 mile an hour for 12 minutes straight, above 1800 RPM. So about the set criteria it would take to get that service stability track message. That was that clue I was telling you about, kind of led me to that. And I'm driving, and it dies. And it shuts off right after it sets the stability track message. So I get the same fault. And I get it back to the shop, restart the car, drive it back to the shop, check it out, short to voltage on the circuit again. Recheck all the powers and grounds. They're all good. So I go, all right, I burned myself. I just smoked another module. What do I do? what did I do wrong? So I checked the EGR valve, and between pins A and E, which were right here in the EGR valve, which, as me and Scott were just talking about, this is this image that's between pins E and A on the EGR valve. I don't know if you can see my mouse moving. I don't think you can. That image that is between those two is traditionally used as a thermistor. So like an engine coolant temperature sensor that as the temperature changes inside the thermistor, it literally pulls closer to ground or away from ground, however you want to look at it. It's a thermistor circuit. So that image is a thermistor image. So it would lead you to believe that is some kind of exhaust gas temperature sensor, which is common. It's especially California emissions stuff. I'm used to a lot of Nissans. California emissions vehicles will have an EGR temperature sensor. So this looks totally like a valid diagram in here. This is not true. That circuit is not a thermistor. That is either a stepper motor or some kind of a variable rate solenoid that's in there. So it's like a motor. I want you to think of it as like a motor. So testing the old EGR valve, we were at 167 ohms of resistance, and the new one was 5.36 kilo ohms. So 5,000 ohm difference-ish. So, and for those of you that are not super familiar with resistance to amperage, when you think about amperage and resistance, remember that if resistance decreases, amperage will increase. So if we have 5,000 less, or some odd fraction less of resistance, the amperage is going to increase exponentially as well. And any kind of driver circuit that's current limited inside of PCM, I mean, that thing is not designed to carry 30 or 40 amps of current. It is going to burn the driver. And what is weird is that it burning the driver somehow shorted it to voltage. So I did not have the ability to pull that PCM apart and inspect the circuit board and components to determine how that's possible twice in a row. But whatever circuitry is inside of that PCM allows for that to happen. So if that, almost like a dead short, take a PCM power and a PCM ground, touch them together, you probably will let the magic smoke seal off of the PCM, and you can't put it back in there. So that was where I skipped that step. I did not confirm what caused the damage to the PCM, and I allowed that same part, which was a white box part from a retailer that uses the orange color a lot, that part. That was where that receipt on what that part was for. So that was the problem.
How long did it last?
Does it look like a wallet with wings?
Wallet with wings, yeah.
Does it look like a little wallet with wings? Yeah, I mean.
No, it did not.
Ah.
It was of the Value brand.
Oh.
So that was my fault. I underdiagnosed that vehicle.
Did it fail like the first time the EGR was actuated, or?
Absolutely, the first time it was actuated.
Outstanding.
I immediately went, okay, let me run through a condition that will allow an EGR event at steady cruise, and as soon as it went, it serviced the billet track.
Cool.
Shut the car off.
Now, did you get the cold sweats when that happened?
Yes.
Yeah, the I fried a module cold sweats. Yeah.
Yeah, I pulled over and put my hands on my face and went, I know exactly what happened.
You know, what's really weird here is that, I remember in the old days, in OBD1, I used to work on a lot of GM cars, and I remember they had an ECM replacement check routine where you had all the connectors, you went to all the drivers, and you basically checked all the circuits. And then GM had a lot of problems with actuators failing and causing ECMs to go bad. So then they came out with that. They called it a quad driver module.
Yep.
And it had internal protection.
Circuit protection.
So that when a failure like that happened, it would just stop and not burn itself up.
Right.
But now here we are back in, what is this, 2007?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like all the people that had all that knowledge must have retired, and then the new people came in and reintroduced these other drivers, and it's like, geez, great, thanks a lot. But I'm wondering, 157 ohms. Wait, go back to your spec there. On 167 ohms and at 12 volts, that I don't. It doesn't seem like it's that bad. Now, it's possible that as soon as it activated, that 167 ohms is not correct, and it actually drew a lot more current.
Correct. A static resistance measurement is completely different than a dynamic one.
Yeah.
That's a good point, Scott. I didn't think about. I like nerding out in that kind of stuff, and that's something that I get asked a lot when I talk about Ohm's law and teach the particular subject is why can I do the math on this bulb of resistance and get what I think it's going to be amperage wise, and when we actually measure it, it's different. And because heat and currents and all of that affects the resistance, so it's very difficult to measure the resistance on a lit light bulb. So we don't do that. We measure current, and then we deduce the resistance from that. And if I would have had that thought at the time, I probably would have found some way to load this EGR valve and measure current across it.
Yeah, often
I would have thought about it.
Often actuators don't short until they're in use. So that's a great point. You may measure it when it's cold and it may measure okay, but as soon as you command it, it's now shorted, and then there goes your PCM. Yeah,
I use that example for ignition coils when a lot of guys will ask me, well, why don't you just measure the resistance of the ignition coil? And a resistance measurement, it gives you two possibilities. It is definitely a bad ignition coil, or it might be a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this 167 ohms, I mean, you're right, Scott, that the math doesn't work out. That's not enough to smoke something. We turn it on, and if it goes to 0 ohms, I don't know.
Yeah. Good lesson. I mean, this is good. Yeah. Good to share this kind of stuff because
I have no problem sharing my mistakes.
So I will make one other comment here. So you did kind of pat yourself on the back about your authoring and the way that you've diagrammed your writing, and I think that's really good. And I think it benefits a lot of people that read this, because a lot of guys, and I remember when I was starting out, I didn't know how to put a sentence down. I knew what I wanted to say, but I didn't know how to say it. But reading, continually reading and watching how people articulate translates into a lesson, and you start to learn how to write better. And ultimately, You know, I remember over the years I'd see guys where they start out and then all of a sudden they're writing for magazines and stuff. I'm going, wow, yeah, their writing skills changed quite a bit. And it's just from being around it and watching how people are writing and sharing and that kind of stuff. So it can definitely help a tech, especially when he's in the shop and he's writing up a story and he's going to ship it up to the service advisor. That should typically translate into a better ticket than the it needs a mass air meter and here, sell it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not going to say it's a perfect process, but it's the process that works for me, and I'm continuously improving that.
Yeah, we used to tell our guys in the shop, and it goes back to the legal thing. We would say, pretend that there's nobody else around except for the customer and the judge. That paperwork better stand on its own, and it better tell the whole story and what we did and make sense. Because if it didn't, we failed. And so that's good. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah. I'll share my mistakes anytime.
Oh, please do. I'd like to hear about your mistakes.
I really do. I enjoy it because I learn from them a lot. I mean, I am still a young technician. I am far from the most knowledgeable individual and far from the best technician. So I learn a lot from every mistake, and I'm just glad that every time I make a mistake, nobody dies, so we can fix it.
Good point. Good point.
So nobody dies.
Somebody else talk, please.
I'm looking to see who's not muted that I can pick on.
Yeah, Brian.
Everybody's trying to mute themselves.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions or things that they want to talk about?
Everybody, there's Tommy. Hi, Tommy.
Everybody wave to
Sorry, I'm
Tommy.
late, gentlemen.
It's all right.
I just had to
Everybody
go
look
diag-
at.
I had to go
Does he working?
diag a key. I had to go program a key that needed a fuel pump.
Oh, what?
Nice.
That was always interesting.
Everybody take a lesson from Tommy. When you build a house, put a wall outlet right above your couch so you can charge stuff.
Yes.
It is the coolest.
A month after we bought this house, we literally got water up to about right here.
See?
I swear to God.
Proper planning there.
So that's why it was up there. They knew.
Just in case we got a round two, I can get a raft and just charge my phone up there.
Nice.
Oh man.
What everybody else work on today? Everybody that's here,
I wrote a desk all day.
there you go.
I
Yeah.
hope that's all you wrote. I hope that's it. Oh, I'm sorry.
I programmed a new instrument cluster that actually just needed a fuse.
So, Keith, how do you handle a situation like that? That's a good question. They call you in the program. Do you offer the diag, or you just program and then when it goes
Called me
back
in the program, and then and after I did the programming, I said, "What did you replace this cluster for? What was your goal here?" And I always ask the same question, regardless of what it is. And the first thing they said was, "Well, for the power locks, of course." I said, it's a 2006 F250, and I'm thinking to myself, that didn't have any retained accessory power or anything at all for the locks, so I pulled up a wiring diagram. There's actually a video on my channel for it, and within less than 5 minutes, I made the diagnosis that fuse 19 was missing, and then I looked underneath the back seat, and there's a fuse laying there on the floor, perfectly good, not blown, popped it in. I mean, all I can figure is somebody had it out. Went to go put it back in. That's where I found the fuse cover was laying on the floor in the back. Before, when I had first stopped by there yesterday, I saw the fuse cover laying on the floor in the back. The shop owner swears up and down he didn't do that, but he just put the cover back on. I'm guessing they must have left the fuse loose and it fell out inside the cover, and then they threw it underneath the back seat. And I'm just staring at this fuse saying, that can't be that easy.
Yeah.
Put the fuse in there and it's done. So, a $600 cluster later, and a 5-cent fuse being, placed back where it belongs.
Was it a 5-cent Harbor Freight fuse?
No, it was actually a regular OEM fuse.
That's happened to me a bunch of times. Working over the phone and doing that, you'd be surprised how many people call in, and have like wipers or something not working, and you go through the fuses. And the first thing you ask them is, "Did you check the fuses?" "Oh, I checked all the fuses." And especially doing a lot of Volkswagens and everything, generally what I tell people is, if you got a fuse box, if it has two prongs in it, put a fuse in it. And you'd be surprised how many cars you can fix with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anybody here ever get those auction specials with half the fuses missing?
Yeah.
Those are great.
I get all kinds of awesome stuff from used car dealers and auctions. People unplugging stuff and trying to set codes on cars or make them run bad when they're going through the lane.
Man,
I get them throw the keys away.
I had a legit Honda Accord with all 3 coils in the back disconnected, and it was still running. It wasn't even running that rough. It was just like my trims were like all lopsided. I thought it was out of time.
I'll attest to that. 3.5 Hondas run amazing with one bank of coils unplugged.
Same thing with
it was scratching my head because I didn't think I had a whole bank down, because it actually still ran. It didn't have a lot of power, but it ran, and it wasn't even like, you know how you feel a dead miss. Nah, it was like it was all right. So that one kind of had me stumped.
That's how they get away with shutting down 3 cylinders on a Honda.
Well, I used to do a lot of wholesale, and with a lot of used car dealers go to auction, buy the cars, and it's insane the things the cars they would buy and the cars that would go there. Like I said, people like they didn't want people to because you're allowed to check the cars before you buy them and go and bid on them. So if you know you're selling a bad car, I've had people throw the keys over a fence, so like the car will be pushed through the lot, but it can't run. Like cars with seized engine, it's ridiculous the stuff that happens. Or people would bug a car so they get it for cheap, and then refix it. Yeah,
that's what I see all the time. People unplugging stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Or that one that I had, what was it, 2 weeks ago, that we were trying to figure out whether or not we could program for a non-air pump, because it was an air pump car that had a non-air pump motor installed in it, and came for a check engine light.
That's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Dude, I had a guy back when I first started.
What happened
with that?
Go on. Well, the car had been sold, and the customer brought it back with the check engine light on. So when I called them and told them that it was going to have an engine put in it, or I could pull the PCM and send it out to basically have it programmed out of it, they bought the customer out of the car.
Gotcha. Cool.
I had one. It was when I first bought my shop. It was this kid, and he bought a CRX, and he wanted to make a race car, and it got towed into us, and he put a different motor in it and everything, and the interior's all apart, and I look behind the dash, and literally every single wire is cut out of this thing. Cut, not pulled, not unplugged, cut. So I said, dude, where's all the wiring? He goes, oh, that's just bullshit wiring. You don't need that. Nonetheless, the car didn't run after that. We told him to take it. It's ridiculous, some of the stuff.
It's cosmetic wires.
Yeah, it's extra wires. You don't need that.
Cosmetic wires.
Those are for
I will
show.
say what is great about used car dealers and things going through the auction, at least for me, that's been really good, is right now, about any given time, they sell a car that's a 10-year-old car, or a car that's like a sought-after year range. So right now we're in the like 07 to 2012 year range, kind of what's being sold. So I get to see a lot of the strange things that happen that are just outside of warranty, and a lot of times the stuff that ends up at auctions that are from cars coming from a new car dealer are things that sometimes, like with new stuff, say like 16, 17 and stuff, that's something that the car was bought back from the dealer or was traded in because the person got sick of trying to fix it, and the dealer just auctions it to get out from underneath it. So sometimes I get to see some kind of neat things that were caused by a car put together on a Friday or something like that that you don't normally see every day on something that's new.
I had a 2011 Santa Fe 2 days ago from an auction. The dealer actually towed it straight to my shop, ready for me to put an engine in it. And I go, Well, let me start it up. Starts up, runs beautiful, but I had this horrible howling noise. I'm like, okay, and I look. I had a brand new Hyundai belt, brand new Hyundai tensioner, brand new Hyundai alternator. So I'm like, man, maybe they just, they threw all these parts at it, and they figure, well, it needs an engine now. Well, I'm like, well, let me diagnose this first, because I wasn't convinced the engine was bad. I yanked the belt off, and the noise went away. I was like, all right, so okay. I start moving every pulley one by one. There's this ugly gold-plated idler pulley. For what purpose, I don't know. Even the bolt is covered. So I'm like, all right, well, let me spin it. It felt rough. Okay, I just ordered one, and I put it in, and can you believe the noise went away?
Cool.
Nice.
I was like, wow. But I'm talking about, you should have heard this noise. I should have recorded it. It was horrible.
Yeah. Oh, it's interesting all the things you get to see. We just had at the shop, it was a 17 Hyundai, and I don't know the outcome because the guy bailed on it as soon as he figured it out. But he bought it for his daughter, used car dealer, in a 17 Hyundai with like 6,000 miles on it. And going down the road, it would just intermittently die. But it would die like every hour. Normally it was on a turn. So he brought it to us, and originally we were going to look at it, and I said, yeah, it'll probably take me a few hours to drive around if it doesn't do it all the time. And he goes, well, I paid a lot for it because it was going to be a car for his daughter, so he wasn't looking to make money, so he goes, let's take it back to the auction. So we never got to look at it and went right back to the auction, but it was a brand new car. It was something that someone had, I assume, been driving on a lease, and the dealer must have looked at it and said, yeah, our guys can't figure it out. It takes too long to drive. We're not dealing with it. We're going to ship it to the auction. So it is certainly like crazy the things that you see that some people wash their hands of that then end up in somebody else's lap. Let's see.
That's not.
My bad. Ends up back in a dealer's inventory. Yeah, agreed.
I got nailed with a couple of them in the past few months.
Yeah? Do tell.
I had a, let me think here. Believe it was a 15 or a 16 Canyon with the mini Duramax in it. Then, no joke, it had, I believe we were up to 6 DEF pumps, 4 DEF injectors, all the lines, you name it, had been replaced on this truck, right? And I actually got a case study on it. If any of you guys are interested in it, shoot me your email, I'll give it to you. Long story short, a GM engineer came out for this particular truck, and me and him were on the test drive, and I just happened to catch it on the GDS. I looked down and I see my pump speed, the command, drop to nothing, and it's normally about 70 psi, dropped all the way down to 8 psi, and then recovered instantly, and it was setting the codes. Long story short, the DEF module, which mounts on the tank right above the spare tire on that truck, ended up fixing that particular vehicle. I bet it had $6,500 to $8,500 in parts put in that. And then it happened in South Carolina. I'm in Northwest Indiana. Lieutenant bought in Wisconsin and ended up out at my dealership. It was that was an interesting one. That one got me pretty good.
Northwest Indiana. What part of Indiana? Sorry to interrupt you.
I'm just outside Valpo. I'm just to the south of Valparaiso.
Okay.
What's the name of your dealer? Is it Mike Anderson?
No. Anderson's a little more north of me in Maryville. I'm actually at Weir's down in DeMont.
Nice. Okay. I'm in Chicago.
My in-laws, my in-laws live in Munster and Cedar Lake.
Oh yeah, not too far from here.
So you know where to put that case study, right, Andrew?
I'm gonna give it to you guys here. I just started playing around with the Google stuff a little bit, doing the Google slides, trying to do it all Ken and John Thornton style. So
okay,
you guys.
Let me
go
know.
On go on Diagnostic Network and post it down there.
Yeah, if you need help making it nice and pretty with the images in line, a lot of these guys here know how to do that.
Okay. Yeah, I'll post that up for you guys here in the next
Cool.
couple hours here.
Where do you go see John Thornton, Andrew?
A lot of times he comes down to us through NWI, the parts supplier we have.
Okay.
He used to come actually into Maryville and do classes, but out in this area, man, we just can't get enough guys interested. It's really
I know Sanders does a lot of A lot of training there.
Yeah, we actually, a good friend of mine is the instructor at Portage High School, the Votech instructor, and we're doing a lot of stuff right now with hands-on with him with the Pico at the school.
I missed that class, man. I had a guest. I should have been there. My buddy Pedro and Will were there, and the other Pedro.
Yeah. I was talking with both those guys, so that's pretty cool. You know, we were able to open the school up, and the school's really nice. I think it's 8 bays on one level, and then he's got a second level for summer. Yep. It's a good thing. We got CTI comes out over there too, but trying to get anybody to show up. I mean, if you get 10 to 15 guys, you know, in this area to show up, that's a good turnout, which is kind of pathetic.
You're a CTI guy.
Louis Nelson.
I missed
Oh,
Louis.
Jesus. Very smart guy, man, but very smart guy. Oh,
Thanks, Tanner.
That was loud.
What's that?
That was the loudest headphone put on I've ever heard.
I don't know why. Does it work?
It works. I heard every single move.
Yeah.
I don't know why it did that. That's weird.
The
So it
mic
wasn't
moved 3 clicks. We could tell.
ready.
See? I told you.
I haven't used this headset in years, but my AirPods died.
Oh, man.
Yeah, Louis Nelson was my guy when I lived in Chicago for 12 years. The he was very hard to. If you fall asleep very quickly in class, he's not your guy. But he's a very, very, very smart guy. I enjoyed his classes.
I've gotten to know him on a somewhat personal level. We gotten pretty close. He emails and sends me text messages when he needs some help, which is for me very humbling. You know, if he's got a GM, like a new product issue, he's trying to get a class going on, a lot of times he'll send me an email, which is awesome. So I've actually been trying to help him with some Duramax stuff for CTI. So we'll see what comes of that.
Nice. Well, there's 2 CTI guys in here right now. Let's see. I think there's only 2 of us in here. Is there more?
Well, Rich is there. I don't know where he went. He's getting food probably.
and then Sandra's in here from ATG too. So got people from all walks in here right now.
Sandra needs to turn on her camera, bro.
Yeah.
Like legit, she needs to turn it on.
Or at least unmute.
I think she has to unmute and say hi to us. She's gonna ignore us.
Sandra actually had a lot of requests for people asking for certain training in different areas. That was in the YouTube comments.
Yes.
She is the one to talk to if you want ATG in your area. You have to find her on Facebook and send her a message for getting training in your area.
So far, every ATG class I've attended has been amazing.
I agree.
Like, I wish it could be a week long, and that's how good it is.
So I will attest to that. ATG classes, the books that come with them are designed to be a manual that is standalone. The class is not needed with the manual. It is worth its weight in gold the way it is. It's just a bonus you get to take a class about it as well.
And it's written in a way where you can. It feels like you're talking to the guy. You're not. It's not like encyclopedia level. It's written very easy to understand.
Tanner, could you rub the mic on the manual source?
Along the spine, if you could. That would be great.
You wanna model that shirt for us real quick, since you don't have to zoom out or nothing.
What's he modeling the shirt?
Yeah, can you model the shirt real quick?
Yeah.
I have to do a stand up.
Yeah.
Turn around.
Yeah.
Who's that?
You. We're talking.
Me?
We want to see your back.
You want to see my back? Let's see.
All 3 inches
You
of
have to zoom out.
He's still in frame.
It's still.
Hey, I found out. Get this. So, if you take your shoes and you have heel problems like I do, underneath your sole, if you take and put the gel cup things underneath the shoe sole, it still helps. It also makes me like 3 inches taller.
I thought you were gonna say you're gonna end up in Kansas again.
Nope. was a life accomplishment. I gained 3 inches.
What is
Never been able to do that.
If you had 3 inches, what does that make you?
5'8".
5'1".
5'2" and 3/4. You know you're talking to a third person when he tells you their measurements in quarter inches.
Oh man.
Hey, real quick here before I start driving again, because unfortunately I'm still heading out to the next job. But Scott, you did a terrific job on that video for DN, explaining how to actually, introduce the material onto the website. That was
like that. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, it was terrific. It was very clear, very concise. I mean, it was, other than even just saying the editing was terrific. It was just it made it very simple that I went in there and I just tampered around with it a little bit there just to see if I could begin a post. And it's, flawless. Absolutely terrific.
That was a one take.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, and you saw I made a mistake along the way, but it's like it's all organic. So,
Right.
So thank you for that. Tell a friend.
Will do. I think we've told about 120 of them today.
I really appreciate this too. This is awesome, guys. I appreciate it.
Well,
so what's your itinerary here? I didn't see the total agenda.
Well, it really wasn't an agenda. It just kind of happened.
Yeah, but working as well.
Okay.
Following will be much more organized. To be honest, we wanted to know if more than 7 people, us included, were going to be here.
You know what I'd like to do is, since I'm on the West Coast, I'd like to. I think we should experiment sometime where we're doing something live to a car. We can be in my shop, or we can have something there, and we'll broadcast and see if we can play around with something.
That sounds fun.
Experiment.
I like that idea.
All kinds of fun.
Yeah.
Well, you have the coolest shop, so I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
You guys should come out and see it.
Yeah,
lots of space.
If you guys want to see some cool stuff, just creep on Scott's shop.
Yeah, go to Google. You can take an entire tour of the inside of a shop like we did through Google.
Yeah, you can do the stalker tour.
Yeah, the complete total stalker tour.
Not a part in the back too.
We spent about 45 minutes one night snooping through his shop via Google.
Cool. Yeah, my wife again. She's the one that when we had that guy come out to take all the pictures. Those are all still pictures, and he stacks them together or stitches them together. Well, we cleaned the shop. I mean, it's usually pretty clean, but we did a super clean, like the day before, to get it all nice and spotless. And no, it turned out good. We were happy. That only cost $300 too. It was crazy.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. The guy put it up.
Great advertisement.
Yeah, he hooked it up on Google for us, and we're golden. So.
I wish all photography was that cheap. I'm learning right now about how expensive wedding photography can be. $300 would be a godsend right now.
You just hit me up with the all-you-can-eat buffet, bro. I'll take my phone. We're good.
I went to Blimpies today because I love Blimpies, and they said they cater everything. I want Blimpies to cater my wedding. I want
Blimpies is
Chinese
good.
food.
What is Blimpies?
Sub shop.
What?
That's up top.
They don't have that in Ohio, right?
I didn't have it in New York. In upstate New York, we didn't have it either.
Oh, it's so good.
It's only on the East Coast.
Yeah. We have one here in a Walmart right down the road. But I always go to Chick-fil-A instead.
Oh.
Yeah. Are we talking?
Now we're talking about food. So yeah, I think we kind of ran out of topics, but this is kind of fun.
No, actually, there's still one more question in there from the YouTube group, and that was from Sarge again. He was asking a discussion about good scopes and accessories. Have you ever built any accessories for your scope? Any homemade accessories? And
funny you should ask.
Well, right now we're giving away a pressure pulse sensor made by a friend of ours, and we have an event that we're attending Super Saturday in October, and basically if you were to be referred by us, or if you were to buy a T-shirt or sticker from our website, let us know, and we'll put you in a drawing to win one of those pressure pulse sensors. We have 3 to give away.
Can anybody screenshot the pictures?
Yeah.
I think I have it.
I just saw Andrew asked who's going to Super Saturday. Our entire group will be there.
Yeah. If you can, send us an email. If you saw one of our posts and that enticed you to go, send us an email letting us know, and we'll put you in a drawing.
Okay. Now the good scope questions. I mean, we got hours, so let's
real quick before we do the scope thing. The stickers. These look pricey on the website at $10, but these are outdoor rated vinyl. They go on laptops really well, and this is one of those things where at $10 this vinyl is rated to last 7 years.
It's 3 colors as well.
Yeah. That was the big part of it. Like, a lot of people that I've talked to said $10 for vinyl is really expensive. Like, it is expensive. It is an outdoor rated vinyl. You can put it on the window of a truck and it's supposed to last 7 years.
Okay.
Now.
There's one big question here I have to address here, because I know that this is the one that, Scott, this one was definitely to you. It says, what's the difference between IATN and DN?
Yes.
What's the delta there? Okay, well, our platform is not free. We are really looking out at the future and where technology is, or communications are going to be taking place. We see ourselves being embedded in tools, and I'm not talking about just diagnostic tools, but shop management type, shop management, cataloging. If you're looking up a part and you're doing research, and there might be some auxiliary information that you need related to that part, and we have a way to reference anything that we might have. We want to make that available to companies like Worldpac or CarQuest, or any of the other parts, top level parts companies that will come out and start integrating with us. We're also it's a brand new platform. It's all new modern technology. It works on any device, or any modern device with a late model or current browser. And it will continue to adapt and evolve. And it's focusing on the diagnostician. That is really where my heart is, because I know that those are the guys that get taxed with all of the difficult to repair challenges. And a lot of shops are structured in a way where they don't reward those guys. That guy's the one that's always studying and trying to get better. And you've got, no discredit to anybody, but you've got the other guy that comes in, and he comes in at 8, he changes out water pumps all day, and he goes home at 4 o'clock, and pretty soon we're going to see a layer of technology on these vehicles. It's going to be a really regular occurring phase where you can't even proceed on that vehicle until you do some analysis, and you've got to have somebody with some intelligence performing that analysis before you can go. I do not see a machine that's going to replace the neural network that needs to be developed between your ears, and so we're highly focused on connecting the folks that are deeply engaged in delivering education and knowledge, and also the tools and equipment, and bringing those to the marketplace. And without that nice circular communication channel, we're not going to be able to evolve and get to where we need to go. So listening to Andrew's talk there just a minute ago, I mean, he's giving me the dealership role, and I'm sure that's happening all the time, where just continuous repair events get, things get replaced, and they keep chasing the symptom, but they never do the root cause analysis, or don't spend the amount of time to do it. And really, that is really where our main focus is. So, so if there's any other, if you've got any other examples on a deeper description on what you're looking for, please send them my way. My email address is sbrown@diag.net. and I'll be more than happy to field any further questions.
Great.
Anybody else want to add anything to that?
I think the biggest thing with Diagnostic Network for us is that basically we don't have to deal with the chest pumping and everything else that went on in IATN that made IATN, Facebook, and any other platform non-learning friendly. It's tough to grow young techs. It's tough to grow I guess it's tough to grow any tech, any age, and learn and want to learn when you reach out for help and you get beat up for it. So that's the biggest thing for us with Diagnostic Network is
absolutely
that we don't have to deal with that. And because Scott is willing to come and talk with all of us and help everybody as we come up with ideas, he's great about being open and bouncing ideas off of him and wanting to make everything better for everybody. So it's really nice to have something that's out there for us to use and be able to have input on what goes on with it.
Yeah, we thank you for that, and we want to create a learning culture, right? I mean, a lot of you guys are always wanting to learn more and learn from each other. Even in an online space, I mean, even in our platform, it can seem a little intimidating, and so we've got a number of ideas on things that we want to roll forward to help some of the lesser experienced technicians and get them graduated up through the varying skill sets that they want to learn without feeling that intimidation. So we see that we can likely establish a sort of a mentorship, a virtual mentorship within our platform. And these are some of the things that I want to start talking to you guys about, as we explore and begin developing these types of features, because you guys will be able to provide me with some good input and help us evolve and get to where we want to be. So thanks. So that answer your question there, Keith?
I'd be somewhat similar to what the union does. Pick what you like and stick to it. Not everybody's going to be a diagnostician. Not everybody's going to be a grunt guy. Not everybody's going to rebuild transmissions. I don't know. I kind of feel like people should just stick to what they like and what they're good at.
Maybe we can bring in some shop owners next time around and see if we can get some of their input as well.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely a deep subject. And, some of these kids are highly analytical. Some of them may be totally lost on how mechanical things work. So I think that that's a pretty broad subject, and it'll be a great topic to disseminate.
Agreed.
When you figure that in 3 years, Mercedes is going to be full electronic brakes, no hydraulics whatsoever. And that kid is coming out of tech school. He's going to be out there doing oil changes and everything else, and then have to start learning brakes all over again.
Yeah.
It's the future isn't waiting for us.
Yeah,
Agreed.
God, no.
exactly.
So we got asked about scopes, and that's why I'm sitting here messing with stuff. Most of us use the Pico, but has anybody used a U-scope?
Yes.
I believe I can't say no because I'm on video using one.
I don't own one, but I'm dying to have one. I'd like to have a scope at the house, or some way to have it more portable, where I can have one everywhere,
I got one at the house, but it's because I got a giant toolbox at the house.
Yeah. You're one of those I used to be a mechanic guys.
I still diagnose in my slides. In fact, in some of my posts, you could probably see my ugly toenails.
What?
Don't go look. It's okay.
That's a YouTube video.
So
I was just setting my filters to not show me that.
Yeah.
I honestly feel that every scope has its benefits and its downfalls. Some have a little bit more user-friendly than others. Some are more accessible than others, money-wise. But whatever it is you decide to buy, I think you need to practice. Build your own cart, keep it out there, don't put it away, because then it's going to be easier to stick to your routine than it is to actually practice with it and learn, especially since most of us are learning on the go.
Well, yeah, I do. I don't fix cars on the daily anymore, turning wrenches, but I'm on tech support all day now. And if anybody listens to me talk on the phone, one of the first questions I ask is, do you own a scope? And they'll say, no, but I have a snap-on tool. And I was like, what's it called? So, well, we got a Varus. I said, you, sir, own a scope. So, the problem is it sits in the bottom drawer, sits on the toolbox, and it's never turned on. It should be turned on, should be there, ready to go, and pull it out, because you can do so much stuff so much faster with having a scope. And I like to know what's going on with a car, why it's acting the way it is, and why the computer sees what it sees. And so you can only see that with a lab scope.
Yeah, so how do we fix that? How do we fix that problem where these guys have these tools and they're not using it?
You bring up the newer generation, honestly.
Show them the value of the tool, which is one of our focuses.
I think just convince them that the biggest thing for me when I was learning was the frustration in trying to learn the tool and not understanding how it works. And the takeaway is that to not give up on it. I mean, it's going to be frustrating, and you're going to, especially with a scope versus other tools, you're going to hook it up to a car and not see your capture on the screen and not be able to figure out why it's not on there. But the key is just to go ask, and to have, just to pull up Diagnostic Network again, to have a place like that where you can go ask something that, you may be a new scope user that's never used one before, and you're worried that you're going to go online and ask, and you're going to get beat up and called an idiot and things like that, where having something like Diagnostic Network available at your fingertips where you're not going to get beat up for that, and you can go and ask that and say, never used a scope before, I hooked up to the car, I'm trying to get, say, a cam signal, and I can't get anything on the screen. You need to just be willing to reach out and ask for help so that we can help you get to where you need to be and understand what you need to do with it in order to get what you're... Go ahead, Tommy.
And it's also to be said that I'm a fairly novice scope user, I believe. But I will say this: what has helped me is training. I know it sucks because it's hard. You work 9 to 5, 9 to 6, or whatever, and then you have to keep your own. And then you have to keep your own time and out of your day to go train and time away from the family. But that's really the only way I was able to progress and learn how to enjoy what benefits a scope has. And once you do master it, your day at work will be a lot better. It's just the small sacrifices you have to make. Some of the stuff that we do at TBT can also be shown to your bosses or whatnot, and like, look what I can do if I had the proper tooling, or if you can, I'll go to training, but if you can pay for it. I mean, there's just certain ways of going about it, and if it doesn't work, then maybe it's time for you to find a better shop. They're out there. There are some great owners out there. So that's just, everybody take their own little 2 cents for what it's worth. That's just for me.
I agree.
That's also a similar thought process we should use on scan tools. If you have an OE scan tool, you should probably familiarize yourself with it. That way, when you need to use it, you understand how to use it. It's the same for all your tools. Any scan.
When I first started scoping, it was mainly because of one of the biggest influences for me was John Thornton, and his best advice was, he actually told me to pick up a Vantage, and I'm not saying to do that, but his advice to me was to pick up a Vantage Pro and just play with it because it was relatively inexpensive, had some good guided functions to kind of help you through or stumble through the first few rounds of it, but after you feel comfortable with it, you can actually, basically know the limitations of your tool. Know the usefulness, but also know the limitations of what it can't do, and that's and that'll save you from a lot of headaches.
Also, learn on good cars. Don't start out with your first broken car trying to learn how to use a scope.
Yep. Practice on cars that are actually up and running.
If you want to know the first thing that will burn a new scope user out is telling them to first use a scope on a broken car.
Yeah, you'll get frustrated because you don't even know what you're looking at.
Don't have your first scope delivered to your house so that you're tempted to plug it into the wall outlet.
Into the wall outlet.
I did that. But I agree with the advice that John Thornton gave to you, because if you haven't used a scope before, I mean, a Vantage is a good scope if you use the component tester. If you have really no idea what you're doing, just follow it. It's there. My first scope I bought myself was a Modus. I still use it. It's my go-to. I fully believe it. I mean, it's not the greatest in the world, but it's not the worst, and it's still better than a multimeter. You know, I follow that wholeheartedly.
Now, one thing to keep in mind for everybody about the guided functions, Pico does have guided functions on there as well.
Yep.
Well, I'm at the component tests. Yeah,
Yeah.
Pico does have guided functions, but I've actually used the Snap-on component tester where service information failed, and it actually gives you pin color and everything and what you're looking for.
Yep.
So I will agree with a lot of people in the YouTube chat that the best possible scope you could ever get would be any scope that you could have over no scope.
Here.
Yeah.
And any scope that you're willing and comfortable to use and pull out, and if you're not comfortable with it, maybe that's not the scope for you. Maybe you should try something else.
There's knowing limitations.
Yeah. Currently, at my disposal, I currently have a 4425 Pico, a 4423 Pico at the shop. I don't own that, but it's at my disposal. I have a Vitronics 5200. I have a Vitronics MasterTech that has a 2-channel scope built on it. I have a Handtech 8-channel. I have the U-scope, and no Snap-on products. So, and all of them have a fantastic use. I have also owned the Autel scope, and I have also owned, I used to. I sold it to somebody.
Rich has
Possibly
the original Vantage.
Rich has an old ass Vantage.
He doesn't realize how old I am. I still have my original Vantage.
It still works.
Awesome. I think
That is one of the best scopes.
Yeah.
In its
My
day,
first scope was a
absolutely.
Tektronix.
Made me real.
Desktop scope.
The Tektronix 2020.
Yeah.
Yep, terrific little scope.
I still have the user manual in my truck because of all the known waveforms and styles and definitions it has in it.
It was terrific.
Yeah, it's a yellow manual. Matter of fact, I'll tell you what. I will the next live stream I do. I will show the book.
I wonder what year that original Vantage came out.
Was that
I won it as a door prize somewhere.
Yeah,
it was
where. I'm just amazed it still works, but it's 20 years old, at least.
The Vantage that I own still has the number 133 as the serial number. It came out in 2000.
Okay. Well, then it's not older than me. I figured it would be.
It's almost older than you, Tanner. Let's admit it.
I can go all the way back to 1984.
Whoa.
That's when I was born.
Is that when you got? Did you have a mullet back then, Rich? We all know you did.
He definitely did.
Yeah, Rich is from Jersey.
And a Trans Am.
I was a rock star, not a redneck.
So in the mid '90s, when the internet started coming around, we were interfacing with some guys at Snap-on at that time, and there was a guy named Pete Vernazza. You guys know who he is? You ever heard of his name?
No.
Yes, I do. Didn't he used to work for Bear Allen?
Well, he was an independent guy, but he was up in the Silicon Valley area, and he went to work for a company called Balco, and Balco was a kind of a skunk works. It was a balancing company, but it was a skunk works that Snap-on had. And he was into scopes and all that, and he was on the Vantage research team. He teaches at De Anza Community College in Cupertino, in the Bay Area. In his office, he has this little glass thing. He's got the prototype Vantage that he was originally testing with, and it's like in his little museum there. So I saw him about, I don't know, probably about 6 or 7 years ago. But if you ever get up there and you're in that area, go to the college, ask to talk to Pete and say, show me that Vantage, and tell him I sent you up there. And also his nickname, this is back when we were trying to figure out what Pip and Spout was on TFI.
We just had a discussion all about that.
So his nickname was Pip because he's so wiry, he's always active. So he's hyperactive. But anyways, the guy's a great guy. But he could go into stories on the research and development that they were doing. They were going out to all these new car dealers, and they were like getting signals off of every system on that car. And none of the dealers understood why they were even doing what they were doing, but they were harvesting a lot of content, and that's what went into that tool to build that database. Pretty remarkable.
Right. That's neat.
Well, in closing, gentlemen, I think it's time to call it a night. I would like to personally thank everybody for attending and giving us your 2 cents. It was a pleasure hosting. Hopefully, I'm pretty sure there's going to be more to come. Please, if you guys can, visit our website for, if you're interested in a T-shirt or a sticker. Also, we will all be at Super Saturday, and I hope to see you guys there. Also, like to thank Scott Brown for joining us tonight. And
thank you for having me. Thanks.
I don't hope to see you there. I expect to see you there.
Exactly.
And drink beer.
We will see all of you at Super Saturday.
Yep.
You can go give Tommy a big hug when you see him.
Oh, really big hug.
Tommy, I'll be standing there with a free hug sign.
and wearing the tablecloth.
Anything more than that, and then I'm gonna have to get dinner. And I'm not a sad leading chick.
Oh.
And just closing there, if anybody's actually looking for any training, if you go to our Train by Tech's website, we have a link there, so you'll be able to find some of your local training and some of the big events.
Yep, local training, larger events. It's all on there.
Oh, also possibly Tanner, and I know Rich for sure. We will be attending ASTE next week. I hope to see you guys there.
Yep. Oh, is Scott going to be there too?
Yeah, I'll be there.
Oh, snap. I'm going to bring my earplugs. I'm just kidding. I'll see you there, Scott. It's time for me to buy you a beer.
Oh, Scott's muted.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Oh, Scott, we got technical difficulties.
Yeah.
Oh.
No, there's no technical difficulties. He's on a Mac. There's no technical difficulties there.
All right, guys. So
I don't want to get into that.
yeah, we are going to close it out, but I wanted to thank everyone for showing up and letting me talk. And then,
like we had a choice.
Yeah, right. I really wanted to thank everybody for joining the conversation in both YouTube and on the Zoom platform. I mean, this is great. This was the purpose. I hope you guys get to understand where our hearts are in this entire project. I was asked today if we were paid for this. And so I guess we haven't made it clear. We are 100% volunteering all of our time to create this content for you guys because we want you to succeed as well as us to help grow in the industry. So we see this need, so it's got to happen regardless. And so anyone else got any closing remarks before I shut it off here at the 2-hour mark?
Yeah. We want to. I think we all want to thank you for sharing in our passion. For making the entire industry better. That's what this is all about. We all, see what needs to be done, and we have the drive to make it happen. So thank you for joining us in that. Thank you for taking your time out and out of a busy work day and having to go to work tomorrow, but spending time with us. It means a lot.
I have to go back to work now.
Yep, Keith, you don't have to stop working.
Keith doesn't sleep. If anybody needs anything or has any questions or stuff that you want help with, want to see videos on, want case studies on, things like that, reach out to us and let us know. And anything else that you can think that you may want to see online, reach out to Scott about putting it on Diagnostic Network. Anything that you think may be an asset to have there, reach out to him as well.
Cool.
Thanks, guys. Great job.
Take advantage of that free trial so you guys can see what we're actually talking about.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a great. Everybody chip in, and it can be great. It is great. It will be great.
Agreed.
All right, guys.
All right, I think
I'm pressing the button.
Alrighty.
Alrighty.
Have a good evening,
Night,
everybody.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.
Thank you again, everybody.